Okay, we are here now.
Hello, hi. Oh
I
my,
guess you can tell the guests, what happened to us for half an hour.
oh my goodness. Well,
Apologies, you
yeah,
know.
many apologies. Well, first I began telling Kino that there may be loud noises in the background because a roof is being replaced on my 1890s home that I live in. That was the first thing. And then we've been having all sorts of challenges in terms of being able to be live together on the StreamYard or live YouTube. So that's been a challenge, right? But
Yeah.
you gotta go with the flow and have faith things will work out, right?
At
And have
least we
faith,
never.
yeah, faith in helpers, right?
Yeah, well, at least we never completely cancel the show. It's just gonna
Yeah,
be a pre-record. We're
yeah,
gonna figure out like why we couldn't go live. Like I'm feeling it's because of YouTube regulations, just to let listeners
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I think they want you to first go live by yourself, and then after you go live by yourself, then they give you like a bit more rope.
Okay,
Yeah, okay, now
yeah.
you can have
Uh-huh.
a guest. I
It's,
guess
it's
just
I'm going to say it's so funny because, of course, we're both live right now.
irony. This is the
we're
irony.
talking we're talking about cyber live, right?
Yeah. We live, but we're not live.
So
That's the
funny.
irony right there. But okay, okay, this is cool. This is a welcome episode to all the beautiful people out there. And I guess, Dana is going to explain why we are, why this podcast, and what's our mandate for it, and why it's so personal for both of us. I guess yours is longer than mine. But
Well,
yeah, but thanks for having
mhm,
me. I appreciate being here as a co-host. Who would have thought, 2 months later after meeting each other on my
yeah,
podcast, now we're doing
yeah,
our own podcast together.
that's
you know,
right.
so that's the
Uh-huh.
beauty of technology, what we can actually do in this day and age.
Absolutely. Yeah, that
Yeah.
you can connect, right, and reach
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and people, maybe not everyone, but the right people are going to respond. It's almost like the right people are
Oh,
reaching out, and
definitely.
then the right people write you back, right, or email
Yeah.
you back. Um,
It's a key
so
word you use there, connect. We want to use this platform to connect with millions of people out there on the
yeah,
topic of suicide prevention. You know,
absolutely, yeah,
you
and
you know before technology you couldn't do that. You reach out to people like, well, who was in your region or your state. But
yeah.
now, we can reach out to so many people out there in different countries
Mhm.
who are right now battling with suicidal thoughts, and just send love towards them. you know
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yeah, and that whole idea of stigma, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the idea of the terrible idea of demeaning other people, making them quote other, less than, whatever, in a terrible way. That is really smashed to bits in terms of people openly sharing their stories, their humanity, right? That mental health is emotional health, it's part of our physical health, it's part of who we are. So to be able to use the internet for such a positive purpose, not only in the sense talking about it and inviting others to share their stories, but there are arts and healing type workshops, and we can talk more about that. That these can be available for free, right? And you don't need to leave your home to get there, and you can make friends, right? You can learn something. You can have a
Yeah.
maybe a deep time together expressing yourself, but in that expression, it can also be enjoyable in a positive way in terms of being authentic and being heard and valued for who you are. So it's really exciting for both you and I to bring the Hold On campaign, to the world, as it were, right? So I like to say a little bit about myself and the Hold On campaign. So, well, I go by two names, right? And maybe other people have several names too, right? But professionally, I go by the name, first name Diane, last name Kaufman. And I'm a retired child psychiatrist as of June 30th, 2023. To become a child psychiatrist, you need to first be an adult or general psychiatrist, and then you do a fellowship in child psychiatry. I'm double boarded. I'm boarded, meaning I did training, internship, and residency in pediatrics, and then I did my boards in adult psychiatry, and then I did a child fellowship. And well, I'm 71 years old now, so you can imagine I've been a child psychiatrist for decades and decades and decades, right? I have a lot of experience. Um, on going back to the name, I like to call myself. My cell phone's ringing, so I have to turn this off, right?
100% organic show, guys.
Okay,
100%
sorry,
organic.
sorry. I thought I turned it off.
Yeah.
So I like to go by the name Diana, Diana, for my creative self, right? Um, Diana, or the other name is Artemis, one's what, Greek or Roman, um, is the twin sister of Apollo. And Apollo, the Greek god, was the god of medicine, poetry, and music, and more. So I like that name of Diana from its mythic origins. And also in Sanskrit, there's a word Diana, which is Dyana, which means creativity. So that's kind of cool, right? Um, and in my professional life, I've certainly met young people, children, teenagers, young adults, as well as regular adults and older adults, even into 70s or older, when I was seeing adults who have experienced depression, anxiety, bipolar, otherwise known as manic depressive disorder, attempted suicide, cutting themselves, sometimes sadly burning themselves as a way almost to modulate their emotions, impulsive suicide attempts, planned suicide attempts, and tragically, I have known teens and an adult who died by suicide. In my own life, when I was in medical school, I attempted suicide. My intention was to be dead. I did this alone in my room, my dorm room at medical school on purpose. Fortunately, the prescribed medicine that I took that could have killed me did not kill me, and I became very sick, very nauseous, vomiting, ended up vomiting blood. I had gone to my sister's home, and I was admitted to an emergency room and was medically admitted. And I can tell the longer story another time. But back then, I remember the psychiatrist asking me if I wanted to be admitted to the psychiatric unit. And at that point, I was no longer actively suicidal. So they were not able to, quote, commit me against my will because I was not demonstrating, at least verbally, telling them that I was having suicidal thoughts. And because of that I wasn't acutely suicidal, but I think even more so because I was afraid of the stigma of being in the emergency room, attempting suicide. Now they want me to go on a psych unit. And I really thought, oh no, like my future as a doctor and a psychiatrist is over if I were to be on a psych unit. That's not the case at all, but that's the level of stigma that I was feeling and thinking about back then. And that idea of stigma and perhaps not seeking the help that you need is not only, it's less now, but it's still happening, still relevant for sort of the general population, but it's also true for healthcare providers as well. I was just reading an article just yesterday about that, talking about for physicians, suicide being, quote, a silent killer. There's an increased rate of suicide for physicians compared to the general population. And part of that is still fear of what's going to happen to them professionally if they let on that they've had suicidal thoughts. So I have personal reasons, not only professional reasons, for wanting to help people, including myself, right? In terms of if you're having suicidal thoughts, if you've attempted suicide, if you're a family member and one of your loved ones died by suicide, or someone in your family is grappling with suicidal thoughts, how we can all help each other. Because, I feel that although not all suicides can be prevented, I do believe that we have to do all that we can in terms of education, outreach, interventions not only in terms of course, going to the emergency room, seeing a therapist, getting a thorough assessment, which includes a physical, medical assessment, as well as a mental health assessment, uh, following up on recommended treatments, and also the expressive arts have a role to play, I feel, for those that it speaks to, as it were, in terms of art, music, dance, song, drama, painting, movement. There's a whole realm of other type interventions that can be healing, and I don't feel that they get the notice that they ought to. And I really want to promote that. So the Hold On campaign um, is dedicated to using the power of art to educate, express, connect, and heal. I'd like to just say a little bit more about how that word hold on came about. So I'm a creative type, and even since a young girl, I was like to write poetry. And even in medical school, I was writing poetry, and some of that poetry, which I still have in a diary that I kept, it shows the progression of what was going on for me in terms of my mental health, which was not good. And I was keeping that a secret. Um, I guess I was putting the secret into the poem, but I didn't go the next step, which is would have been important to do, would have been to share that poem with somebody or to tell somebody in regular prose what was happening with me. And then as the years went on, I started to collaborate with singer-songwriters. Um, and I wrote a poem called Don't Give Up for my patients a couple of years ago, which starts off, don't give up even though you want to. And I collaborated with a singer-songwriter, a producer, an animator, and it became really a powerfully impactful in terms of its lyric, because the lyric, it's a form of therapy. It's almost like cognitive behavioral therapy in a song. It's validating a person's experience that you want to give up, right? And then talking about the reasons why it's not it's not the right time to give up, that you don't need to give up. And that song won all sorts of international awards. And then I also wrote a poem after reading of the death of Stephen Voss, also known as Twitch. I read of his death on the New York Times. I hadn't followed him, but Stephen Voss was a dancer, a creative. He worked with Ellen DeGeneres. He was on Dancing with the Stars with his wife, Allison Holker. He was vivacious, loving, kind of a larger than life person that sort of exuded a life spirit. And he died by suicide. which was a shock to apparently to everybody that knew him and loved him. And even though I had never met him or even followed him, I was so moved by what I read about him that I wrote a poem called Heartbreak Times Infinity. And the poem is about the layers of heartbreak. And the first one that I wrote was the heartbreak that your very own mind is trying to kill you. And then you act on the thoughts, the loved ones are left behind, you're dead, the loved ones are now at increased risk of suicide. And in that poem, there was a repeated refrain, but hold on, your thoughts are all mixed up. And it's talking about how your feelings and thoughts come and go, and the pain is not going to last. So you need to hold on. Don't act on those suicidal thoughts. And I reached out on Upwork to find a singer-songwriter, and I ended up collaborating with Shan Carballo, who is a former person living. Well, he's not a former person. He's a real person. He's a former California person who's now living in Bali. And Shan wrote just an amazing song, a singer-songwriter, and we called it Hold On. And that became an animated video, again by Lucia Martinez Rojas, who did a wonderful job. And Shan later shared with me, I didn't know this when I had chosen him, that he himself had grappled with suicidal thoughts and depression in the past, and how meaningful it was for him to work on this song. He talks about he dropped everything to work on this, and that it was almost like a divine download, that he heard the music in his head very quickly as he was working on the song. And then that song won all sorts of international awards for Best Original Song, Lyric. But what ended up happening, and I'm leading into the Hold On campaign, was um, it it won an award in Paris, France. It might have been like a gold award for something. And I was feeling super excited, like, oh my God, somebody in Paris loves this song. So I'm really getting off on that excitement, kind of an ego thing. But then at the very same moment, I was feeling really defeated, because it was like the song is being acknowledged for its power, but I can't get anybody to listen to this song in the next room, right? Because the whole purpose of the song, although it's nice to win an award, the real award is for the music video to be on a mental health website, because not only because of the content of the lyric, but it has the 988 helpline number, and perhaps that song is going to help somebody actually call, right? Because you could. Well, I have to say this, that I think there's a lot more that we need to do to get these suicide prevention lifeline numbers known. In the United States, it's 988. I recently learned that if I remember correctly, that in Canada it's also 988, but in other parts of the world they have different numbers, and people really need to know that number, right? Just in terms of general health, they should know that number. So here I am, super excited. It won an award in Paris, France, but I'm not getting any traction for people to use the song for its purpose. So I really felt despondent, and I'm not kidding, like down, right? But the power of sleep, so I went to bed, something happened while I was sleeping, and when I woke up in the morning, I was totally energized, and I just said, well, F it, I'm starting the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention, right? If Because sometimes we might wait for somebody else to do something, but we need to carry the mantle ourselves. So that's
Yeah.
how the Hold On campaign began.
Yeah, yeah. No, 100%. 100%.
So I'm going to
You
pause.
can't wait for people, you know.
I know. I said a lot. So now it's your
Yeah.
turn, Kino.
No, but I mean, that was the point of, the first episode, is to just give people, especially new people who come on and they join from all around the world now, who are you, why you do what you do, what is the Hold On campaign.
Mhm.
Um, but you're right, there's more complainers in the world than these people who actually bring solutions to the table. Like, it's easy to complain about something,
Yeah.
but if you're not gonna take action and actually do something about it, then you have no right to complain,
Yes.
because you have the same strengths as anybody else out there. So if you're not willing to take action, and you don't need to be an expert. I mean, I'm not
Mhm.
an expert in suicide prevention or the topic of suicide or psychology, but I'm
Mhm.
here, you know, because I like there's something that's missing for me on why, as you said, the numbers are not coming down. So clearly there's an issue. There's a loophole somewhere in what, um, and this is like, like I come now from a street point of view, like asking the questions of what's actually being talked about on the street. So if the numbers are increasing and not decreasing, there's an issue here. And we need to identify what that issue is. Is the issue with the system itself? Is there
Yeah.
something that psychologists are doing that's not working, but they're not like, actually taking accountability for it? Those are the questions that come to my mind.
Mhm.
Like, if there's any role I can play on the show, especially when we have like guests that are coming on,
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
asking the questions that really matter, that people are scared to ask. Like, what are you going to do for me? Because the thing
Yeah.
that, gets thrown back into a doctor's face these days in 2024 is, you don't know anything about me. So how are you really going to
Mhm.
help me?
Yeah.
Are you really putting the time to really understand me, my feelings? Or are you just thinking? You're using intellect, but are you feeling me? Do you feel what I'm feeling in this present moment in time? Are you listening to me? We're sitting on this couch and you're listening to me, but are you hearing me?
That's
There's lack
very
of
well.
accountability. Like, I
Yes,
mean, I
very
had the
well said. Yeah.
yeah, like I had these two guests on the podcast, the same ones that I said I'm going to talk to you about, about bringing on, and it's two twin sisters. They're from Germany now. They're based in Los Angeles, and they spiritual. So they also were like quite open on the show to talk about how their father had a split personality. He was good one day, he was bad one
Mm.
day. There was a lot of trauma for them growing up, but they managed to use like organic healing methods, to reprogram their
Mhm.
subconscious. And one of the topics we brought up was about behavior. Like, if we look at a 12-year-old today or a 10-year-old today,
Mhm.
their behavior is out of control. They acting out. They cutting themselves, or their suicidal thoughts. Things don't make sense, or they're drawing a
Mhm.
picture of a boy hanging from a tree, something like that. But those are stuff that we actually inherited from our bloodline, and that's like what we actually went into. Some of the stuff that we actually do these days is because it's like we inherited, and our family fails to at times take accountability when they see this sort of negative behavior, because it's
Yeah.
going back to their roots as well. And until we actually do something about it ourselves, like as in reprogramming our thoughts, our subconscious, and we sort of behave better as we move along. So it's sort of like, we have to identify what the issue is, like
Yeah.
what are
And issues, because suicide
issues. Yeah,
is
yeah, because clearly
not just
something is
one
not
thing.
working. Yeah. So I mean, like what you do using visual arts, is innovation. It's a new method. It's a new avenue that people can go through to actually heal themselves. Because from where I'm sitting, the traditional ways aren't helping much these days. You know, so that's what like we don't have all the answers yet on the podcast, but we're going to get the answers.
And we're
So,
going to. What I like is we're going to learn together,
yeah, yeah.
right?
We're gonna get that. We're gonna call the experts in. We're gonna call the victims in. We're gonna call survivors in, and we're gonna try put this puzzle together.
Yeah.
And talk back to suicide, because we can
Yes.
only do it together. We can
Yes.
only by getting each one's point of view. Okay, what were you feeling when you had those thoughts? When you attempted to, take your life? What were you feeling? No, don't tell me what you were thinking. Tell me what you were feeling in that moment.
Yeah.
And then let's call in the expert. And you know what will be also great is like if we have, okay, you an expert, okay, a retired expert, but if we call in like someone who's still practicing, who's in the field of
Of course.
psychology,
Yeah.
and we call in a victim as well, and all four of us
Oh,
are on the
yeah.
show together. You
Yeah.
know,
That would be
let,
great.
let, let's see where the loophole is and how we can close this gap.
I,
Like that's
you
where
know,
I'm coming from.
I,
Yeah.
I had thought of that title, Talking Back to Suicide, because when you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, and I'm coming at this from my own experience as well as, in a sense, secondhand, listening to others. Of course, we want firsthand people expressing themselves, but when you're having those thoughts, in a way, it's a one-way conversation. It's like suicide is telling you what to do, right?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
not able to talk back to it, to um, have a conversation and to, in a sense, defeat it or outwit it, or almost like what Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, like throw water on the witch so it like disappears, right? So that whole idea of being able to talk back to it, um, that also incorporates understanding it, like what is that suicidal thinking coming from, what's feeding it, right? If we can understand that, then we can better understand how to um, unravel it, approach it, do something that's going to make it less powerful, right? So in a sense, having a podcast itself is helping with the idea of isolation, because when a person is having that kind of emotional distress or suicidal thoughts, for some people, they tend to isolate, right? They're
Yeah. Yeah.
isolating
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
friends, activities, various things that are going to bring them in connection, with other people. And that's important. And also, I think maybe we also tend to isolate internally from ourselves. So it's like there's one chair in the room, and in that chair is suicide, and there's nobody else in
Yeah.
the room, right? So having a podcast too is a way to break through that isolation.
Yeah. Like, um, I don't know. Okay, there's a lot of people out there that won't admit this, but I'm going to admit it, because I'm so open, about myself. But have you ever had those moments in time where there's thoughts going through your head? It may not be suicidal thoughts,
Yeah.
but you go into the bathroom and these thoughts just keep playing, 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 and you look
Oh
in the
yeah.
mirror and you start talking to yourself. You know, you see, you start talking to yourself. That's why I say this method really does help to have that conversation. Don't let it
Hmm.
be a one-way conversation. Let it be a
Yeah.
two-way conversation, because one thing that was bothering me for the last few days is, when you have a good heart and you have good intentions and you want to do good for people, you
Hmm.
can't, as you said, you can't save everyone.
Yeah.
But there's people out there, there's a good percentage of people out there that will, they will listen to what you're saying, they'll sort of use and abuse you, and you have to just find it in yourself just to keep loving no matter how people react towards your
Yeah.
goodness. Don't let them make you a bad person to say, look, you know what, I don't want to help humanity anymore.
Yeah.
So I was in a similar
Mhm.
situation over the last few days, because I feel like, as much as I try to help an individual, I don't really get that far. I may be
Mm.
getting that far in the first few days. We're on the same page, we're in sync, it's cool, you know. Then they end up doing something that's not what Kino would have done and not what I would advise you to. So, you know what,
Mhm.
you wasted my time. And then
Mm.
it plays in my mind, and I try not to be an overthinker, especially with, what society, but I think maybe it's spiritual, like that energy you're just picking up, from people. And the thoughts were playing in my mind, playing in my mind, playing in my mind. And today I walk into the bathroom, I look in the mirror, and I say, Kino, enough.
Uh,
Enough.
yeah.
You
Uh
know,
huh. Hmm.
you're stronger than that. Okay, you know what your purpose is, you know what your intention is, you know what you're here on this earth to do. So you're gonna go out there, you're gonna do it. You're gonna get onto this podcast at 10 a.m. with Diana, and you're gonna make the best of it. You know what I mean? You're not gonna let these thoughts that other people keep playing in your mind who don't really appreciate what you're about, because there is other people out there that will appreciate you. So it's like that's the sort of conversation you need to have with yourself, like enough.
Yeah.
You're good, you have a purpose, you're great, you're
Hmm.
beautiful, you're talented, you know you're so blessed with so many things. I can walk, I can talk. Like, if you
Yeah.
just start talking to your back like that, looking at yourself in the mirror, for me, it
Mm.
helps. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. Everybody talks to themselves.
Yeah.
So talk with whatever thoughts is happening in there. That was just an example. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So,
So that's what,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. So we want people out there to talk to us, to jump on board and talk, and get rid of this, this mindset of being ashamed and,
Oh
oh
yeah.
no, it's going to be embarrassing if I had to talk to someone. No,
Hmm.
yeah, be careful who you talk to, because you're going to find people in the world that want you to be in that suicidal mindset.
Hmm.
But there's people out there who actually care and want to do something. Like, I mean, to run this podcast, it's at our expense, it's our time, so we gain nothing out of it. So take it
Well,
from that point. So
I wouldn't say we gain nothing out of it.
or nothing in a monetary sense, as
Yeah,
people think.
yeah,
There's no
nothing in a
sponsorship, so we
monetary
don't get
sense.
paid to be here.
Yeah,
In that sense, that's what I mean.
yeah,
So
of
we're here to
course.
help.
But
You know?
yeah, because I would say that um, no gold bars, right? In terms of money, but I I think I speak for you too. Tell me if I don't. That we gain a lot because we care, right? And
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
care, you have to show you're caring. You can't
yeah,
just keep that inside, right? It's almost the
yeah,
idea of if you see something, if you recognize something needs help, a situation needs help, a person needs help, and if it's in your ability to be of help, I don't know. I have a moral responsibility to to act on that, to do something, right?
yeah.
So
I guess, like, now that we've launched Hold On South Africa,
yeah,
like, let me rephrase this in another way. It's like a standard person's mentality, which, I face a lot on the streets of South Africa, is like, if I want to help you, they like, oh, what's in it for you? It's
mhm,
that sort of thinking. You see, so that's why I bring it up like that. Like, and I'm sure there's all over the world.
yeah,
There's people like, oh no,
mhm,
why does Kino want to help me? Like, what's in it
mhm,
for him? Why does Diana want to help me? What's in it for her? They must be getting something out of this. The government must be paying them for this.
yeah,
It's that sort of mentality, but I don't blame people as well, because when you have to go see a psychiatrist today, they're asking for money up front anyway.
mhm,
You know, now when you get people in this day and age now who are podcasting and sharing their values and expertise and actually educating people who haven't quite gotten on board with how the new world actually is operating, is like, oh, what's it in for them? You know? So it's
mhm,
that sort of mentality that we also have, like, get rid of.
yeah. What you're
That there's
saying is
nothing in
it's interesting too, Kina, what you're saying, because I think possibly when a person is feeling depressed, right, um, they might also be thinking like, well, what's in it for me to stay alive?
mm, mm,
Or
yeah,
what's in it for me to get dressed now, right? Or take
yeah,
a shower, or why eat, right? Or why make myself eat even if I don't want to eat? That whole inner motivation, I think that becomes so important, and something that at times we all need help with, like, what's it all about? Why should I do that? Right? So that's interesting.
yeah,
It's like a segue from what you just said, but in a sense, I guess all of us grapple with that, right? What's in it for me? It's interesting because what's in it for me can have such a at least in my perspective, like such a negative perception, almost like a greedy thing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
what am I getting out of it? You know, um, what's it called? I don't know if I'm saying this right, like quid pro quo or something like that, like tit for tat. Like it becomes entirely transactional, right? That
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
only doing this because I expect that back. And it takes away the human interaction, right? Like because instead of a transaction, it would be like having a relationship,
yeah,
forging ties of community, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and that
I
doesn't
guess,
necessarily. Yeah, tell me what you think.
no, I'm just saying, like, there's so many components to the topic of suicide. You know, like we got so much to touch on as the podcast unfolds.
Hmm.
Like so much to touch on. Like I mean, you know what's strange is that suicide is more likely to happen in a middle class or upper class family than a hobo on the street.
Mm.
You know, and then I ask myself why. Okay, then of course different thoughts come to mind because I mean, okay, I could be wrong, but it's most likely it happens in middle class. It happens to people who come from good families as well. You know, so the question of why there's just so many variations. You
Yes.
know, to get to it,
Mhm.
lack of love, lack of I don't know. There's people who are loved a lot but still commit suicide.
Mhm.
Was it a
That,
cry of attention till okay, I've had enough? You
yeah.
know, or did I
Yeah.
make a mistake? Did I underestimate the medication I was taking?
Mhm.
Um, Like, there's just too many whys when it comes, but we're gonna unfold it.
Yeah.
We don't know it all, but as we move along, just unfold it. Like, why so many whys? Why that family? Why that person?
Yes. Yes.
Where's the accountability from families, mothers,
Yeah.
fathers,
Yeah.
as well? You know?
And society, right? There
Yeah.
was an article in the New York Times just a couple of days ago, and it was talking about most recent CDC data, and it spoke of that women in the United States have increasingly used firearms for lethal means for their suicide, whereas in years past, um, they were not using guns. It's always been number one for males. Um, Part of the reason in the past, when female were not um, dying by suicide as often as men, right? Thank goodness they weren't dying. But the reason is that they weren't using a gun. Once you use a gun, your chances of being dead shoot way up. Pardon the horrible pun,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the very end of the article had one of the either a researcher or a scientist or the person who was reporting on the new statistics, because that was the lead title of the article, had to do with women using firearms. And now that's the number one lead cause of death by suicide in the United States for men and women. He said, well, he, he talked about environmental factors, you know. He wasn't talking about, and this is just me thinking, not his words, but he wasn't saying, well, there were romantic breakups, or there were more women having major depression, or there was more financial instability, with those women. No, he was saying the reason is that there's more access to guns. Ipso facto, if there was fewer access to guns, there would be fewer suicides. And the statistics show that more people kill themselves with a gun than they're killing other people. Now, of course, you shouldn't be killing
So,
anyone with
yeah.
the gun, right? Um, Apart from perhaps I don't know, political warfare, but that's for another topic totally. But we're talking about um, killing people as homicide or suicide. But think about that more people are killing themselves with a weapon. And you can
Mm.
imagine, um, well, any gunshot death is horrible, but can you also imagine being a parent and your teenager or preteen got a hold of your gun and they kill themselves with it? So
Yep.
going back to the idea of causation and responsibility, that society has a role to play in terms of having precautions, right, for to prevent terrible things from happening. Like this thing just popped in my head. Like you buy a toy for a child, and often they'll have warnings like this has small parts to the toy, so not recommended for 3 years and below or whatever. So you have those warnings, right, and those stipulations, right? Um, but or a ride at an amusement park, you have to be so tall to go on the ride, right? So there are warnings that quote society or organizations develop, but the whole idea of increasing access to weapons, right,
Yeah, yeah,
especially in
yeah,
mental health situations,
yeah.
very, very, very tragic, you know. But a
No,
tra-
no, 100%.
but a tragedy doesn't mean that we can't do something to help the next person,
Yeah.
right? It's
No, you're right about the weapons, 100%. It's accessible, off the street, anything you want. And that's just like the world we live in today. Like,
yeah,
while you were talking, I was just
yeah.
thinking, like, um, I should explain to listeners on why I'm here. I mean, why would someone like me be here who's involved in music? And it's just that as I moved along with my life, like, I mean, I had like this spiritual wake up call, like around 7:20. I'm like, I'm connected to people. Like, I can really feel people's sadness inside of them. And as I looked at society more and more and interacted with people more and more and more, people aren't happy. And that affected me. You could have a good job, but you weren't happy. You could be driving an expensive car, but you weren't happy. You're staying in a $5 million home, but you're not happy. You know, on the surface, like you're telling people you're happy, but deep inside you're not happy because, like, you don't open up to everyone out there. But there's some people, like people just naturally open up to this sort of that spiritual connection again. And the more people talk to me, telling me they're happy, the more like it's more of like a unconscious conversation that they have with me, because I'm really hearing what you're saying. And what you're telling me is, oh, you got a great job or whatever it may be, but you're really not happy. And then I like started to look more and more into it, especially now with artists. You know,
Mm,
it's like sort of people have this dream of theirs. We all have a dream when we're young. Whether we actually pursue it or not as we move into our teens and adulthood, that's on
yeah.
us. But there's a good high percentage of people that actually don't. So let's just say 95%, hypothetically speaking. 95% of people have a dream when they're young and in their early 20s, but they don't really pursue it because they're bullied by the system, okay,
Mm,
or by family. No, you can't do that. That's not worth it. Then you need a real job, like, you need a real job. You can't be a DJ or a music producer. You need a real job, because they're not informed or educated that, look, it is a real job. But their,
mhm,
definition of real job is you need
yeah.
to go out there, you need to work for someone,
Mhm,
build someone else's company, build someone else's dream. Then you go out and you do that and you're stuck. Then you get married, you have children, life unfolds. And that's why so many adults these days are getting divorced in their 30s
yeah.
and early 40s. You see,
Mhm,
it's because of that, because you never do or go about the life that you actually wanted to have. And, you would end up getting, either addicted to alcohol or drugs or both, or committing suicide. So those are the sort of things I identify for myself. So I'm like, no, we have to do something with this. I want to go out there and I want to tell people that it is possible. That if you want to be a DJ, if you want to be a music producer, if you want to be a vet, if you want to be a psychiatrist, you
mhm,
can be that. You can do it. Just be a good one, especially if you're going into the medical field.
mhm,
You can live the life you've always dreamed of. So for me, like my point of view is like a lot of people give up on their lives because they're just unable to live the life they want to live. So I can deal with the music industry on my end. I can go out and I can get artists who've given up on this and say, look, there is hope because you can network for me and I'm not going to sign you to this big traditional record label
mhm,
deal that's going to take your soul away and so on. You can do it the right way. And if you're in the medical field, you can be that type of psychiatrist. Don't be in it for how much I can earn from it or how much
yeah.
I'm going to charge
Yeah.
people for it.
Yeah.
Go out
And
there
there's
just like you
and that
have.
in terms of psychiatry, I mean, there's also a whole realm of helping professionals for mental health care, right?
Yeah. Do it for the
Yeah,
right
so,
reasons. That's
yeah,
not
so
going to
you,
bring down the
yeah,
numbers.
yeah. You can be a peer counselor, right, with lived experience, right, helping somebody in addiction recovery. You could be a nurse. You could be a home health aide. You could be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a poetry therapist, art therapist, expressive artist. There's a whole. I agree with you that sometimes, sadly, we may end up living somebody else's life, right?
Yeah,
Which is going
yeah,
to, if we wake up, we're going to realize that. And hopefully that will also inspire us to want to live our own life, no matter
yeah,
how many steps, each step that you take that's authentic is going to strengthen you.
yeah, yeah. It's like what, like this caption I posted the other day is about like death is not the issue. We should not be scared of death. It's inevitable. You know, death is the next adventure. That's what's up. That's what's next. It's inevitable. You can't avoid it. No one can avoid it. But don't die while you're alive.
Yes.
That's
That's it.
worse.
Yeah.
That's worse. While you here,
Yeah.
live your best life. Do whatever it takes to live that best life. Don't give up on yourself, on your dream, on this vision
Yeah.
for your life. Just because somebody, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, look at the Gen Zs today, right? It's a different era. Okay, it's a way different era because there's no balance anymore. Now it's all about being online. So the moment you get told something by anyone, whether it's your mother, whether it's your father, whether it's your friend, whether it's your teacher, you take it so personal, it like just amplifies suicidal thoughts. Oh no, my life sucks, because you're just so stuck, in that bubble. So I also feel like what we also need to do as a society is we need to start educating the youngsters of today about keeping this balance between the real
Mhm.
world and the online world, because
Yeah.
that is also affecting people negatively. Like if you're on
Oh,
your phone the
absolutely.
entire day watching other people live
Mhm.
their best life, it is affecting you that when reality hits you,
Mhm.
you want to take one of those guns on the street and you want to shoot yourself. And because you
Wow.
can't handle the real world. You can't handle the real world.
Mhm.
It's bad. It's really,
Yeah,
really bad.
yes, yeah. Another time, I can share with you a book that I'm reading. I think the author is Jonathan Haidt, maybe Haight, something like that. And he's written several bestsellers, and a recent one is about the wired generation and the severe negative effect it can have on mental health, especially, he points out, for younger people because their brain is still developing. And our brain develops based on our experiences in life. And the
Yeah, yeah,
online world is not real life. And he talks
yeah, yeah,
also about how we learn to modulate and self-soothe our emotions when we're getting distressed. That comes from our early life, and then going early life meaning when we're born and our parents are holding us and nurturing us, and we can see we're reading their faces, they're reading our faces. There's all these small interactions that are leading into what's called a secure attachment. And that goes on developmentally as we get older. But that is also based on not just us on a screen looking at each other. That's based on being one to one or in a group of real people. And there is a detriment to brain development with the overuse of technology. And he gives,
yeah.
I'd be happy to read over the book again and share some of his insights and recommend people read the book because it's a real eye opener, not only
Yeah,
for the young people, teenagers, and young adults, but also for parents. Oh, also, there was an article about how parents are and it's understandable, but they're so distracted by their cell phones that they're spending less time interacting with their children.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many of these memes that go around,
Yeah,
and it can be like, a family sitting in the garden or a family sitting at home, or even sitting at the table during supper time, and they're all on their phones.
I know.
Like, it's a problem, it's an issue. So I want to use whatever platforms, that I have as well, including this platform right here, just to get a message out to adults as well, you know, that you are
Mhm.
also part of the problem. you know, you are part of the problem. So it's about time you just get your head screwed back on again. But one thing I said also in was 2021 goes back to what I said now about adults growing up unhappy.
Mhm.
So with this era of technology now, when they're on TikTok the whole day, they're now living the life they wanted to live when they were teenagers. So because they haven't fixed up here, it's sort of like taking them back,
Yeah,
and they not realizing what's right in front of them, my home, my children, my grandchildren, whatever it may
yeah.
be. That's what I'm doing. So you're unhappy, and that's why you're on your phone. I mean, for a husband and wife to sit in the same room and be on their phones after a day's work,
Oh, I
you
know.
tell me there's nothing wrong here.
I
There's nothing wrong here. You're right about it. I mean, when I was growing up, it wasn't a perfect environment all the time, but I mean, at least you did outdoor stuff, with your parents or whatever it may be. These days, those things aren't happening, and it's affecting me. I mean, I'm getting 2-year-olds that are sitting and watching videos
I
online.
know. Hmm.
I mean, it's really not good. So we have to go to the source, the root of the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
really,
I
really not
yeah,
good.
and it's not that I am or you are anti-technology. It has
Yeah,
tremendous benefits, but we have to be aware of its negative qualities,
yeah,
and
yeah,
also it has it's addictive.
yeah.
And I think it was designed to be that way, right? To spend
No,
as
no, definitely.
to spend as much time online.
As yeah.
Did somebody like it, right? Did somebody share it? Is there a new
Vanity metric.
comment? Um,
Yeah,
and and it loops you in, right? So I think that part of it is becoming aware that it is being designed to keep you as much time as possible, online, right? And
yeah,
and that's not healthy for us, right? For the real person. That in a way we have to set limits, right? And when we're younger, hopefully our parents are setting healthy limits for us because we're dependent on them to say, no, sweetie, it's bedtime, right? No,
yeah,
you can't do that now. Maybe tomorrow, maybe never. Um, and why? Because I love you and I'm your parent, so now it's time to go to bed, right? But as we get older, we have to set those limits on ourselves. And that takes awareness, all right?
mm,
Awareness, and
mm,
also the idea of, and this is hard for all of us, that um, maybe a lot of the positive, meaning health promoting things in our life, it takes consistent effort, right? So it's not like I take one shower a week and I'm clean, right? Right? Or I eat one good meal every 3 days. No, this is a consistent pattern of health promoting behaviors. And as I said, unless we're a toddler or a preschooler or elementary school, after that, it becomes increasingly that we have to do this for ourselves, right?
yeah, yeah. No, 100%. Look at that. Who said we can't talk for an hour? Wasn't that what we said, before we came on? Nah, this is going to be like 30 minutes. But the
Okay.
thing is, like the topic is just like that. It can go
Mhm.
on and on. There's just, for what I said, there's too many components,
Yeah.
too many like different
Yeah.
components to like actually touch on
Mhm.
here.
And
Too
I want to
different.
say, with the idea of the Hold On campaign, that it's not only about having suicidal thoughts and saving your life, because sometimes for all of us, we just may wake up in a funk, like you're not having a clinical depression, which has certain criteria, but you're basically feeling awful, right? Or unmotivated, or what's the point? Maybe you're having anxious thoughts, anxiety, panic, and
Mm-hmm.
and it goes kind of on and on. And I think that idea of holding on becomes important. Like, what are you holding on to? Are you holding on to a negative past, right? Are you holding on to getting caught in the loop of your negative thoughts, like you were describing earlier? Or is it possible to hold on to faith, friendship? I did something recently because I realized that I have friends, right? Um, but sometimes I get so involved with things that I'm doing that I forget about my friends. I forget that I have friends. And so I
Yeah,
decided to make, um, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the week, F is for friendship, Friendship Day. So I have on my calendar under every Friday now, Friendship Day. And
yeah,
that means, and it's all day long, and that means I'm reaching out to a friend or doing something, calling them, texting them, doing something that's
yeah,
oriented
yeah,
around having friends, right? So that
yeah,
idea
yeah,
of that, going back to the Hold On campaign, it can become expansive in a good way in terms of what are we holding on to. And also, although holding on is like holding on to something or someone holding on to us, in a specific way or an abstract way, but holding on can also include letting go. Like, what do we need to let go of, right?
yeah.
And there's a great
It's like,
poem I can share another time that talks about that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It reminds me of this article I wrote about quantum thinking. And one of the three tasks that you have to do is let go. Sometimes we're holding on to stuff that
Yeah,
we shouldn't be holding on to. So we can't, like, quantum leap like our careers, our life,
mhm,
because we need to move from this level to the next level. In order to do that, letting go is one of them.
yeah,
We need to let go. Sometimes we may think we're keeping people or whatever in our lives because we've known them for years, or but you need to really ask yourself, is this person in my life bringing value, positive value to my life or not? Because there's some people that can leech onto you and they're not bringing any value, any positivity to your life. So you have to, like, let go, whether
mhm,
it be thoughts, whether it be people, whether it be an environment, whether it be a home.
yeah,
You could be staying in a home for 20 years, but is the home bringing value to me? Is it a good environment? Am I around good people? Is it a good
yeah,
community? Is it growing me?
yeah,
It's looking at those things. So, like, just for the listeners out there, what we talk about here and what's going to unfold on the podcast is not something that, we're pulling out of a lucky packet. Diana has spoken about, her attempt on her own life and how she's a suicide survivor. I've been through depression, I've been through anxiety, I've faced my own demons along, my young life. It happened to me when I was still young. But I mean, if we can turn it around for the better and live our best lives, live with purpose, live our dreams, you can as well. You know, we never have no golden spoons in our mouth.
yeah.
We managed to turn it around. We managed to reprogram ourselves and make something of it. So you can as well. And we're going to
Amen to
help you.
that.
You can't
Yeah,
help
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So,
So,
yeah, I mean,
so we're
this is
gonna
a,
meet next week, right? We're
yep.
gonna
So
we're gonna
every
we're gonna
Tuesday.
figure
Yeah.
out the live streaming, right?
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. No, we're going to figure it out. And I mean, you got already one guest on your side. I've got one guest on my side. So hopefully next week we have a guest on,
Mhm,
the show. And I mean, like, prior to that, I'm sure depending who the guest is, we can share a bit of information about that and reach out to people,
mhm.
you know. But please
Excellent.
support as a community. We don't only like want people to be like subscribing to the page, like
Yeah,
what all the other podcasters, subscribe, like, join this movement, all of us together,
mhm,
all of us together, whatever you hear here, whatever you take away from here, spread the word. Or if you agree or disagree with
Yeah.
something, reach out, reach out to the Hold On campaign. Come on, tell
Yes.
us, Kino, this is where you're wrong, this is where you're
Yeah.
right.
And
Positive criticism.
we have the Facebook page for the Hold On campaign, and we also have Hold On South Africa, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
please visit us, comment, share your ideas, right?
yeah,
Whether you
yeah,
agree, disagree, have ideas for how we can um, make this podcast really meaningful, right? To
yeah,
all that are involved.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's have a
And,
conversation.
and please visit the Hold On campaign website. It's www.holdoncampaign.org. We are a fiscally sponsored nonprofit through From the Heart Productions. And on the website, there's very many resources to help with mental health conditions, of suicidal thinking, as well as grief, loss, physical pain. And we also have music videos. I'm proud to say, again, internationally award winning music videos. I had on suicide prevention or postvention, I'm the lyricist. And we also even have an opera on the video of an opera. It's called Bird That Wants to Fly, about a traumatized bird that can fly but is choosing to walk because of bad life experiences it had, and it meets a magical horse that encourages it to fly. That opera was inspired by a story that I wrote, and it's narrated by a famous actor, Danny Glover. So if I can write a story and it can become an opera, anything is possible, right? So I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
right, that's part of an attitude, not that anything will happen, right? Or a specific thing is going to happen. But I think that if we don't put ourselves out there, right, into life, then we're almost guaranteed that nothing's going to happen. But if we
yeah,
express
yeah.
ourselves, right, and I'm all for expressing ourselves creatively, right?
Yep,
So I
yep.
think I'm gonna thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm gonna thank
you
you,
know, we-
Kino. Like we probably could talk
no,
for
thank you
another
as well.
2 hours, 3 hours.
Now, there's exciting things to come, And I mean, just to conclude to all listening, if no one told you today that you're great, that you have a life worth living, that you're worthy, that there's purpose behind it, that you're here for a reason, we're going to tell it to you, because
Yes,
we love you, we care,
yes,
you are worth it, you know.
yes,
So hold on, hold
yes.
on.
Hold on, and hold
Yeah,
on for our next episode next week on
yeah,
Tuesday.
no,
Very good.
definitely.
Okay, bye
Okay,
everybody.
cool. So I will catch you on the other side. Right.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye.